Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our Lab Wednesday session. My name is Inez Ford. I'm one of the Ed Associates. I work at Mervo 60% of the time, at Central Office 40% of the time, and I am very fortunate to have my coworker, Alexis Tucker, with me. We're going to be co-presenting.
Yes, good afternoon. Welcome back, everyone, to Lab Wednesday this month. In November, we're continuing our college app craze series. So we have some really exciting content for you guys today. So let's get started.
All righty.
So, our goal for today is we're going to be able to learn the correlation between income and different levels of education. So, when we talk about different types of degrees, you have your associates, you have your bachelor's, you have advanced degrees like your master's and even PhD. So, we're going to learn some of the monetary incremental differences between different types of degrees. And we'll understand why continuing our education beyond high school is important by completing a mock budget activity. Really excited. We're going to go from Issa Rae's confusion to total understanding.
All righty. So, in general, as I'm sure you've heard people say, the more education you have, the more money you make. And we're going to talk a little bit about why that's important today. That pretty they're responsible for tracking anything related to career. And so if you make less than if you have a high school diploma, if you don't earn a high school diploma, right, then pretty much your monthly your average monthly earnings are 24 per month, or about 31,000 a year. If you get your high school diploma, and this is the national average, this is not Baltimore, this is just the national average, is 29.96 a month. Some college is not necessarily an associate's degree, but you taking some college classes, could be a certification or something like that. It's 34.96 a month. Bachelor's degree, which is 4-year college degree, 51.24. Advanced degree, 62.36. Let me break it down a little bit more, because this is more monthly income. And so you can see that if you earn, because we're going to be looking, we're assuming you're going to get your high school degree. So we're going to be focusing on that monthly income for students with a high school diploma. Sorry, not students, for people with a high school diploma and no additional education. Okay. So that's right around $3,000. And you can see, again, the more education you have, the more it goes up. So we're going to summarize the data, and I'm going to show you a chart. Basically, if you have a high school diploma, you let's say you have some college, maybe you get a certification, you may not get that 2-year degree, but you have taken some college courses. In general, you make 7,436 more per year than somebody with just a high school diploma. If you have your bachelor's degree, you make 27,664 per year more than somebody with a just a high school diploma, and an advanced diploma, it's even more. And so if you multiply that over 35 years, we're assuming that you'll be working about 35 years. um just getting that extra college, or getting those college credits, somebody, going to college, and like I said, going after certification or something like that, over the course of 35 years, you're going to make $260,000 more than somebody with a high school diploma. When you talk about a bachelor's degree, you're going to make $968,000 and $240 more over the course of your 35-year career history than somebody with just a high school diploma. If we're talking about an advanced degree, we're talking about $1,474,200 over the course of your career, more than somebody with a high school diploma. And we want to show you these numbers because I know for some of you, you are getting ready for college, and you're going to start getting some financial aid award letters, and everybody's leery of taking student loans. And I'm certainly not here to tell you that you want to take a bunch of student loans, but it's an investment. If you end up graduated from college with $30,000 in debt, and that does sound like a lot, you're going to pay it off in maybe $300-400 a month. But think about it, over 35 years, you're going to make $968,240 more on average than somebody that did not continue their education beyond high school. So if you think, I got a $40,000 debt, but over 35 years, I'm going to make $968,000, then all of a sudden $40,000 doesn't sound so bad. So again, we're going to talk about numbers and talk about what all of this means. So how does education impact your life? So again, this information is coming from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and I'm going to be referring to that as BLS. The average monthly salary of someone 25 and up with a high school diploma and no additional education is $3,244 per month, or $18.73 an hour. And again, that's the national average. That's not specific to Baltimore. So again, 32.45. Does that sound? Can somebody put in the chat? Does that sound like a lot of money? What do you think? Or unmute yourself. Do you think 32.45 a month sounds like a lot of money? Anybody? What do you think? Okay. Well, we will see. If you don't have an answer, we're gonna go through and see if that 32.45 is something you could live off on. Okay.
Kayla said no. Alex
Okay.
said no.
Okay.
Yes.
So somebody said yes and somebody said no. Okay, all right. Well, we're gonna talk about it a little bit more. Okay, so 18.73 an hour, and also keep in mind that this is the average salary of an employee 25 and up. This is not somebody 18 or 19 who just graduated high school. So these are people who have a couple years of work experience. Most people are not going to graduate from high school without any sort of certification or anything like that and make 18.73 an hour. So again, this is for people 25 and up. Okay.
And also want to say that Zoe said if you're single living in the countryside, that might be a lot. But
absolutely, and Zoe, you make an excellent point. 32.45 really does depend on where you live at, because if you're living in Mississippi somewhere where the cost of living is really cheap, 32.45 might actually be a lot. But when you're living in an expensive city like a Baltimore or Philly, New York, we'll go through and see that it's not necessarily as much as it may sound. Okay. So before we go over our budget, the one thing that you want to talk about, we got to talk about taxes, right? So do you get to keep, if you make 32.45 a month, do you get to keep all $3,245? Anybody? Anybody have a job? Do you get, for those of you who work currently, do you get to keep every bit of money that you earn?
sorry, Zoe said you get to keep like $900, and Alex said no, you don't get to keep all of it.
Okay, no, you don't. Exactly. You don't get to keep all of it. So basically, when you're kind of in this price, when you are in this salary range, you get to keep about 75%. That means Uncle Sam, as they call the government, takes about 25% of your taxes. So we got to take that off the top. So if you got, and the way to the way to figure that out, you just turn it into a decimal, right? You're not getting, if 1.0 is 100%, you're getting 0.75. So if you multiply 3250 by 0.75, you come up with 2,500, because again, $750, that's going to your taxes. Okay. So we're going to start with $2,500. Okay. And the first thing you want to do, you want to have a savings. Ideally, you want to take 10% of your income and put it in a savings. So again, we're going to take that 2,500, we're going to multiply by 0.9, because that's 90%. And that's going to leave us with 2,250. Okay. So we're going to put $250 per month in savings. That's what we're going to try to do. And we're going to see if we can live off of 2,250. And again, this is starting with $18.73 a month. Everybody follow me so far? Anybody need me to go back? Slow anything down?
Can you pause a little bit, just so that way people can, and just to clarify, what we would like for you all to do is to, we're actually having you create this budget, right? So if you have a pen and a piece of paper, or a pencil and a piece of paper, we actually want you to kind of go through with us to kind of see, see how you can live off of this, or how you can't live off of this money. So if you need a minute to grab something to write with, and or for those of you that are fancy with it, if you could do it on your phone or on a computer, but just give yourself a minute, because we want you to be able to see the math and really kind of look through it and work through it. So we started off with, can you go back one slide, Inez?
Sure.
Sorry, we started off with the 3250, and then the Uncle Sam took that 0.25, and so now you have $2,500 that you're working with.
And thank you, Ms. Jackson. So we will, I'll give everybody a few minutes.
If you do have a pen and maybe sticky notes or something else to write with, can you give us a 1 in the chat? And we'll go to the next slide. If you're ready to go, can you give us a 1 in the chat? 5, 4. Thank you, Zoe. Zoe's ready to go. 3. Thank you, Angel. 2. Thank you, Kayla. And 1. All right, Judith, we're ready to go, Miss Ford.
Okay, thank you so much. So again, just keep in mind that yes, you had 3250, but you had to lose 25% for taxes. So that puts you right at about 2500. And the first thing you want to do, for those of you who have a pen and pencil, you want to subtract $250 because that's 10% of your budget, and you're going to try to put that aside for savings, okay? And that's going to leave you at 2250. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. You can take, like I said, minus that 250 because we're going to be starting at 2250.
And Ms. Ford, can you explain a little bit more?
I'm sorry.
Could you explain a little bit more about the significance of that saving? Why are we taking out the 250 each month? What if I want to spend that on a pair of new Nikes?
Sure. And I mean, it's just important basically for savings, just in case something totally unexpected happens. And in the life, the unexpected happens. So just maybe you get sick and you're unable to work for a couple days, or something breaks in your house, or just something, your car, if you have a car, your car breaks down, something happens. You just want to have you always want to have a couple dollars in the bank, just that you're not touching, so that when again something unexpected happens, you have something to draw on. You're not trying to charge because, use a credit card to charge up something with a lot of interest, because you have money saved in the bank for those unexpected things. So that's why we're putting 10% aside. So does everybody follow the math about why we're starting at 2250? Just to recap, we had 3245. That's pretty much 1873 an hour times 80. So we had 3245. We had to lose 25% for taxes, which brought us down to 2500. And then we took out $250. We multiplied 2500 by 0.9, because remember, that's giving us 90% of our income, because 10% went to savings, and that's how we started at 2250. Does anybody have any questions about that? And like Ms. Tucker said, can you put a 1 in the chat if you're ready to go to the next step?
Thanks, Zoe. Thanks, Kayla. You guys are on it. Thanks, Judith. Thanks, Angel. I think we're ready to balance our budget, Miss Ford.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Okay, so can anybody take a guess? What's the first thing? What's the major thing that people spend their money on, right? Like, what do you think is the first thing that we got to take out of our budget? Anybody want to take a guess? What's the first expense?
Judith in the chat said food, and Zoe also said food and entertainment. I think we're on the same page when it comes to food. I spend a lot of money on food.
And Angel said bills. Can you?
Okay, absolutely. You're right. Bills. And y'all, those are all things that we're going to subtract. But what's the most important thing? Think about it. Like, what is
housing?
Yes, your housing. Exactly. Right. You got to take care of that first. Okay. So we're going to have you, if you're on your computer, we're just going to have you, if you're following this, and you can literally click here and it's going to bring you to apartments.com. And we're going to have you find a 1-bedroom apartment. So here's the catch. You make $22.50 a month. This is your not make, you have a $22.50 monthly budget. You don't really want to go too much over like half of that, which is $11.25. You can go over a little bit, but obviously you don't want to get an apartment, at the harbor that cost you $2,100, and now you've only got $150 left. So I'm going to give you like 2 or 3 minutes to play around on apartments.com. If you are following along, to kind of see what's out there and what's a 1-bedroom cost, and then we're going to pick right back up. Okay. And if you click on this, this is what apartments.com looks like. And you can literally just put in Baltimore. You can do a search for those of you who are following along.
And if once you find an apartment, can you drop some prices in the chat, just so we can see what, like what you guys are finding in terms of costs for a 1-bedroom apartment in Baltimore?
Yeah, and you can just scroll down. Obviously, this is $14.26 to $42.90. That's probably a little bit too much. So you can click on this price button right here. And you can say that my minimum, you don't have to put a minimum. Hold on, sorry. Okay. So let's say the minimum is 500 and we want our maximum to be 1250, okay? And we're going to get a 1-bedroom apartment. We're just going to say the max is 1 bedroom, okay? And then that's going to bring everything up that's in our price range, okay? And you can click on the first one. This one is downtown on St. Paul Street. Let's see, can we? And you can see the 1-bedroom to 1-bath is $1090 to $1925. Obviously, and this is square. This is like the size of the apartment. If you get the 584 1-bedroom, you're looking at probably around $1090. Obviously, if you got the bigger the bigger apartment, excuse me, you'd be around $1925. So it just depends. But for the sake of the exercise, if you wanted to use $1090, assuming you get the small apartment, you can do that. And obviously, like the closer you are to downtown, the more expensive it's going to be. And that's something you want to think about too. Maybe you eat a little less because you decide to live downtown and you love it. So you take other things out of your budget. Maybe, hey, I like to go out and eat a lot. I like to do a lot of things. So I'm not going to spend as much on my apartment because I really want to have that money to be able to enjoy life a little bit. Maybe you decide, hey, I want to live in Roland Park, so I'm going to get that 1-bedroom for $995. So again, I'll give you like 3 more minutes just to play around with the site because I know some of you are on a computer and some of you aren't. So just wanted to show you apartments.com and give you an idea of what 1-bedroom apartments cost. So I'm going to click back here. And like I said, give you about 3 minutes, pick back up at 106 to play around with it and get an apartment. Okay.
Okay. Judy and Darius both were wondering what about condos when it comes to the type of housing that they might want to be able to select and afford?
Okay. So, and that's a really great question. Just for the sake of this exercise, we're going to do an apartment. Condos, condos are just like houses in that you have to buy them and you have to put a down payment. So usually let's say the condo costs like, you usually put down a 5% down payment. So anybody who's really good at math, let's say you got a 1-bedroom condo and it costs $100,000. If you've got to put 5% down, how much of a down payment do you have to put down? What's 5% of 100,000? Anybody? $5% of 100,000? You can use your phone if you're not sure.
Zoe says 5K. Judith says 250. No clue.
So who said 5K?
Zoe Matthews.
Zoe, you are correct. It's $5,000. And so, like I said, you have to save up for a down payment. Obviously, if you're getting a $200,000 condo, that's $10,000. And you have to have a certain credit score in order to get a condo or a house. And that's a really, really great question. Great question. But again, just to make things simple for today, we're having you have an apartment because an apartment, you still need a good credit score, but you don't put a down payment. You just pay 1 month rent up front and then you get your apartment. But again, obviously, if you rent an apartment, then you're just renting it forever versus buying a condo or a house. Usually you get 30 years to pay a house off or a condo. And so at some point, you don't owe any more money. If you choose to rent an apartment, then you'll never get to the point where it's paid off. So purchasing a home or purchasing a condo is a big deal. And it's something you can pass on. If you got that condo when you were 25 and you kept it for 30 years, by the time you were 55, it will be paid for. And you could give it to your son or your daughter when it's time to make that move and they don't have to pay anything. So it's really important to put yourself in a situation where you can purchase. But again, for the sake of this exercise, we're just having you pick an apartment where you would have to put the first month of rent up front. We're not going to have you do that, but just know that when you get an apartment, you do have to put 1 month of rent up front. You have to have a decent credit score. And when you get a house or a condo, which I'm certainly hoping that all of you do at some point, you're going to put about 5% down, 5% of the cost.
And I think this is also a good plug for when we talk about savings. At the beginning of the presentation, Ms. Ford primed us to take out, 250 or 10%, whatever your income might be. That's the reason why we save for really big purchases sometimes, like saving
Mhm.
for a house or saving for a car, just to make that make sense. Saving is important. Savings are important for things like this. We got some things coming in now about credit scores. Zoe says credit scores are a scam. I feel like it should rely off your work experience. And then Judith asked, "Can you explain a credit score, Ms. Ford?"
Oh, sure. Those are great questions. Please, and I love that y'all have questions. Your credit score, let me see if I can give me 1 second. This is just uh alrighty. So your credit score is called FICO. How is it calculated? Because it's calculated by a couple different things, okay? And I think that my FICO can explain it a little bit better than me. So 30% of your score depends on how much you owe, right? So let's say, for example, let's say I have one credit card and it's worth, I'm gonna make the math easy. Let's say I got one credit card for $1,000, right? If I owe $1,000 on that credit card, how much credit do I have? Like in percent, like how much in percentage, right? If my credit card, if I can spend up to 1,000 and I have $1,000 bill, how much do I have left over? Like, what do I have? 1%, 0%, 2%? If I have if $1,000 is my maximum and I spent 1,000, how much do I have left? Percentage? Anybody know? How about money? If $1,000 is my maximum and I've spent $1,000, do I have any money left on this credit card?
We have some zeros coming in.
Exactly. I have 0% left and $0. So that will bring your credit score down, because what creditors want to see is that you don't spend everything that you have. What if I have one credit card for $1,000 and I've only spent $100 on it? How much credit do I have? How much cash do I have left on it? How much percentage do I have left on the credit card? It's $1,000 credit card and I've only spent 100.
Darius says 90%. Judith says 90.
Absolutely. There is, yes, you are correct. I've got 90% left, right? I've got $900 and I've got 90% left. That looks good. The more I have left, that means I'm only using 10% of my credit. Does that make sense? I have $1,000, but I only owe 100. That means I'm only using 10% of my credit. That's going to raise my credit score, because that's what creditors want to see, that I'm not maxing out everything, that I don't immediately, because that means that I'm being responsible. Yes, I have $1,000, but I'm not spending all of that $1,000. So that's 30%, just that right there. How much credit do I have versus how much credit I'm using? That's 30% of my score. So 10% is new credit, because they want to make sure that I'm not living my life off credit, that I'm not every week applying to a credit card and charging my TV, charging this, charging that. So they don't really want to see that you've applied for more than, let's say, like 2 credit cards a year. So just that number right there is 10%. 15% is the length of your credit history. So if I've had my $1,000 credit card for like a month, then that part is not going to be so strong. But if I had my $1,000 credit card for 5 years and I've still only really just been using, out of those 5 years, I'm only using like $100. So those 5 years, I'm keeping that kind of 90% of my credit open. That's going to look good. And so these are just different components that get you that score. 10% is that credit mix. Like some of that, like that has to do with like, am I using credit to buy a car, which most people do. Like most people have to, what they call finance, meaning you're borrowing, let's say, $20,000 from the bank because you don't have 20,000 to put down on your car. So they're looking at, is some of that credit like credit that I borrow for a car? Is some of it student loans? Is some of it housing? So they look at the types of credit you have. And then of course, this should be no surprise, 35% is your payment history. What do you think, Darius, will happen if I have that credit card and I'm always late making my payment? My payment's due March 15th, and my payment's due on the 15th, and every month I pay it on the 20th. So it's late every month. What do you think is going to happen to this section about payment history? Or anybody, doesn't have to be Darius. What do you think? I'm paying my credit card bill late every month. How is that going to impact my payment history?
Darius says it goes down.
It goes down, exactly. What if I pay it on time every month? It's due on the 15th and I pay it on the 1st every single month for 5 years. What's going to happen to my payment history? How's that going to impact my credit score?
Usually says it goes up.
It goes up. And that's really the way it works. Like, I think the lowest score is, Ms. Tucker, help me out. What do you think is like the lowest credit score you can have? Is it like,
I don't want to know from personal experience.
yeah, I don't know. It's like around 400 or 500, and the highest you can get is like 860. And all of it depends on this. And this has a huge impact because in order to get a house or a condo, which somebody mentioned, you generally have to have at least a 600 credit score. And that means that in general, you're not spending all of the credit you have, and that your payment history, that you're not making late payments. So the first thing they're going to do when you say, okay, I'm 22 and I'm buying my first house, they're going to pull your credit score, and that's going to be dependent upon all of these factors. Okay, the less credit you use, the you paying your bills on time, it's going to go up. If you're not doing it, it's going to go down. Okay, and again, you have to have a certain score in order to borrow money to get a car, to borrow money to get a house. Because think about it, if I'm a bank and I'm going to lend you, let's say you wanted that condo and it cost $100,000. If you pay your credit card late every single month, what does that tell me about what's going to happen when I loan you $100,000 to get your condo? Do you think do I believe, based on what you've been doing, you're going to pay it on time, or you're going to pay it late?
Pay it back.
Exactly. You might not pay it at all. So if your credit score is super low, they're not going to even give you any money to buy a condo, buy a house, buy a car, because you haven't proven that you pay your bills on time. So keep that in mind. I'm glad somebody asked you. I'm so glad somebody asked that. And if y'all want us to do some more presentations on that, we certainly can, because credit, what you do here will impact a lot. What kind of house you can get, what kind of car you can drive, a lot of that will depend on your credit score, and a lot of your credit score depends on if you're spending everything that you get and if you're paying things on time. So thank you for asking that. Okay. We're going to go back to the budget, but that is really important because I know some of you are 18, or you're going to be 18 soon. You're going to start to get letters from credit cards saying like, oh, hey, your Visa will send you a mail. A letter. Congratulations on turning 18. We want you to open up a credit card. Be careful. I'm not telling you not to, but like be really careful, because once you start, your credit score goes with you. So like if you open up a credit card like, oh, such as my favorite store is having a sale, I'm about to go get these Jordans and blah blah blah, and you spend it up, like that's it. Like now you have a low credit score. So when you go to purchase your next cell phone, or you go to purchase something and they pull your credit score, they can see it. So just be careful, because I know I remember turning 18 and getting bombarded. Like it seemed like every credit place sent me a letter like, open up a credit card. And I did, and I was very irresponsible. It took me a long time to get my credit like straight, and I don't want y'all to be in that situation. I was like 18, 19, my God, like just spending stuff to be stupid. Like I don't want anybody to do that. So keep that in mind. So I'm gonna
And
go back to
the lowest that it can actually be is 300. You don't want to fall in that range. A good credit score ranges between 600 and 800 is the best that you can have. So definitely be smart about it. Like Ms. Ford said, we won't spend too much more time on it. But when you do get on college campuses, you will encounter a lot of credit card companies. You'll receive a lot of things in the mail. I also have my own personal experiences with the credit. And another thing to keep in mind for students who are interested in going further away to college, we talk about this often, is travel. So I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri, and moved out to the East Coast to go to Howard University in DC. How am I getting back and forth to home on the holidays and in the summers? I put a lot of that on credit cards. So just keep that sort of stuff in mind. When we think about our college journey, we sometimes forget those micro elements, but we can talk about those things offline as well. So we can go back to the presentation.
Okay, but yes, that's definitely something to think about. I definitely spent money that I shouldn't have, so we don't want you to make that same mistake. So we're back. So remember, we've got our 2250 budget. So to make the math easy, I am going to assume that you spent 1250 on rent, okay? Because that leaves you with $1,000 a month. So if you're following us, you're doing it old school. You got a pen and paper. Take 2250, subtract 1250 for rent, and that leaves you with $1,000 a month. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that, okay? And 1250 will probably be the price of a one-bedroom apartment in like what you would consider like a nicer neighborhood of the city. Not that you necessarily have to live in a nicer neighborhood of the city, but if you want to live, yeah, in like a nice neighborhood, that's kind of roughly around what you're going to be spending, give or take maybe $100 or $150. So we're going to go with that, okay? So 2250 minus $1,250 leaves you $1,000 a month. Everybody okay with that? Does this slide make sense? And type 1 in the chat when you're ready to move on.
Okay, Darius is ready. Zoe, oh, they're coming in fast. Skylar's ready. Angel's ready. I think we're ready. And Kayla's ready.
All right, cool. Who was the person that said, when I said, like, what's the most essential bill, that said food first? A person after my own heart, because food is important to me too. Who said that?
He was either Judith or Zoe. I think we were all on the same page.
Okay, cool. How much can somebody put in the chat? How much do you think the average person in Baltimore spends on food? One person, not a family, but like on groceries a month. What do you think? Throw some numbers out there. Anybody?
150. It depends on if they cook or order out. Good point.
Good point. Excellent point.
200, 300, 250. I feel like we're on The Price is Right.
Okay, I know. Okay. So, according to Business Insider, because I was trying to find it specifically for Baltimore, the average person spends $375 per month on groceries. So again, we've got to do 1,000 minus 375. That's 625 left in your budget. Can everybody do that? And again, tell me if you need me to slow down. So remember, for line items, we started with 22. Well, we started with 2,500. We subtracted 250 for savings. That brought us down to 2,250. We subtracted 1,250 for rent. That brought us down to 1,000. Now we're subtracting $375 for groceries, and we have $625 left in our budget. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yes, we're getting some yeses.
Okay. And it's $375 sounds like a lot, but if you think about it, it's like $95 a week on groceries, and that's really not like that may sound like a lot, but when you get to the grocery store, it's very easy to spend $95. So we subtracted $375, and I'm assuming everybody wants a cell phone. You're gonna subtract $100 for your cell phone bill, and that's gonna leave you with $525. Everybody follow that?
Yep.
Okay. Now we got to pay utilities. I'm sure you've heard your parents talk about that. That's gas, heat, and electric. Generally that's Baltimore. What is it? Baltimore Gas and Electric, BG&E. I hate when they mail me a bill, but this is what, as a single person, this is kind of around what you be paying, about $225 for gas, heat, and electric. Okay. In most apartments, back in the day, it used to be included, but now it is not. So when you subtract $225 for utilities, you're coming up with about $300 left. Does that make sense? So we got our food covered, we got our cell phone covered, we got our utilities covered. So when we turn the lights on, the lights come on. When we flip the switch, the light comes on. When we plug something in, we got electricity. If we got a gas stove, we got that. So is everybody following me so far?
We're getting some yeses. We have a few students bonding in the chat over how expensive food is.
Okay. All right. So type 1 if you're ready to go, to move on.
We're ready.
Okay. So next step, right? So we're going to go back to the education. If you had an associate, and again, this is just based on average. If you had an associate's degree, you'd have about $635 left at this point. Because right now, remember, you got $300. Bachelor's degree, based on averages, you have about $1,500 at this point. So again, when people are like, hey, we want you to continue your education, this is why. Imagine if you had an extra $1,500. Like you would be, if you had $1,500 now instead of $300, there's a lot more you can do. And an advanced degree, which means that's like a big category, but it means you have a master's degree or somebody with a law degree or medical school. It just means that they got a degree beyond the 4 years. You would be at $1,923. So imagine what the person, so you got $300 left. Imagine what the person that has $1,500 left. Like think about some of the things that person can do that you can't. Let's keep going. So we didn't even talk about phone, internet, and cable, right? So I'm giving you a deal. I'm saying that it's $150. I personally pay a little bit more than $150, but we're just gonna assume you get the cheapest package. So now you got phone, internet, and cable. And I think most adults would agree that you definitely need internet. Some people can say I could live without cable. I would agree, but in these days and times, everybody pretty much needs internet. But let's say you got a bundle deal, right? Because it's usually cheaper. If you say, okay, I just want internet, they'll usually charge you like 80 or 90 a month. So most people go ahead and bundle it and put phone, internet, and cable because it's a little bit cheaper. So remember, you had 300. Now we took out, you got phone, internet, and cable, and now you're down to $150. Can anybody think of something else that you might need? I'm gonna give you a hint. I'm coughing. What do you think I'm talking about? What's one thing we didn't calculate?
Judah says clothes. Jerry says medicine, healthcare, or
Yes. I'm not really coughing. I'm just saying it for the sake of exercise. Healthcare. Because remember, you're adults now. Your parents can cover you up until 26 as long as you're in college. But we're assuming for the sake of this argument that you are truly an adult, you are living on your own. You got $150. So I just, well, not just, I started working for Baltimore City Public Schools about a month ago. And I literally went into the information they sent me to get this number. So I didn't just make this up. The cheapest plan that you can get for Baltimore City Public Schools, if you were working here, is the cheapest healthcare plan you can get is $160 a month. And so that means like when you need to go to the doctors and that sort of thing, your healthcare pays for that. Because it's very expensive. If you just walked into like the doctors and you didn't have any health care and you had to pay out of pocket for everything, it's expensive. Like it can be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So if you want that covered, the cheapest package that Baltimore City Public Schools offers is $160 a month. And they're actually much cheaper than most employers. So right now, if you were paying $160 a month, you're in the whole $10. Because remember, you had 150 after you paid that phone, internet, and cable. But now your healthcare costs 160. So now you are in the whole $10, which means you've got to take that $10 out of your savings. Okay. Can anybody think, does that make sense? Can anybody think of, so right now we had to take $10 from our savings. Can anybody think of some other items that were not included in our budget? Because I heard some people say it, some other things that are not included.
Oh, we're getting the same answer for everybody. Clothes, clothes, clothes.
Clothes,
Furniture.
exactly. So some things I didn't include in your budget. So we didn't even mention a car, right? Because you can't really afford one right now. A car note, like typically people don't go and just, if you want a newer car, most people don't have $25,000 or $30,000 in the bank that they're just gonna go and buy a car. This is where credit kicks in, which is why I'm glad somebody asked you. You generally go either to your bank or you go to the car dealer and you ask for a loan that you're gonna pay back over the course of 5 years for your car. So when they call it financing, but let's say you go to your bank and you're like, hey, I want to buy a car that costs $25,000. They're going to pay that $25,000 directly to where you bought your car from, and you're going to pay the bank a little bit back per month. But how much you pay depends on your credit score. But since you, and usually if you want to, we're talking about like a Corolla, for example, like a regular car, you may be paying $250, $300 a month back on that loan, what they call a car note. If you get an expensive car, maybe you're paying $500, $600, $700. On this budget, you couldn't afford a car. So you're going to need a monthly bus pass from MTA, and that's $93 a month. We didn't talk about toiletries. That's toilet tissue. I'm assuming when you get in your bathroom and you use the bathroom, you want something to wipe yourself off with. You need toilet tissue, you need napkins, you need paper towels, hair products, cleaning products. That's all under toiletry. We put about $75. And somebody said a clothing budget. I'm just talking about work clothes. I didn't even mention like clothes like that you want to wear when you're not at work. But let's assume you spend $75 on that. If you add that up, now you don't have any money in your savings. These three things cost more than what your savings is. And this is real. This is what happens to a lot of people. They don't make enough to cover their bills. So if you don't have a savings, how do you buy a house? How do you buy a condo? How do you afford if you get sick maybe one day and like you can't work for 2 or 3 weeks, so you don't get a check? That's what you have a savings for. So it's really difficult to live on $2,500 a month. It sounds like it's a lot, but when you really break it down, it's really not. Baltimore is not cheap. I mean, we are not in Mississippi, we're not in South Carolina, where sometimes things can get really cheap. Like it's an expensive area to live in. And so you really need to make like a certain amount of money to be comfortable here. And again, like if you say, okay, I'm not really feeling school, or I don't really want to, take the time to get that additional certification, or I don't, like you can say, okay, I'm going to graduate from high school and I'm not going to get any additional education, but like this is kind of the life that you would be leading. And can anybody think of this one item? There's a couple different items, but there's another big item that I did not put in the budget. Can anybody think about it? Can anybody think about something that can be very costly that is not in this budget?
Judith says student loans.
Okay, but remember for this budget, and they can be, but in this budget, we said we're just going off the average monthly salary of somebody who graduated from high school and did not get any additional education. So that person they wouldn't have student loans because they didn't continue their education. Can anybody else think of something?
Zoe says public transportation and also college.
Okay, but again, and again, yeah, we did do this for public transportation. What about you, right? Let me not say you. Anybody got any little brothers or sisters? Anybody got any little and younger brothers or sisters?
Yes.
Okay, we didn't. So what did we not include, right? We didn't include children. So this budget now, again, if you're early 20s, maybe you wouldn't have a child, but think about trying to do this budget if you had a child. This is not a picture of my son, by the way, but I do have a 19-month-old and I pay $1,400 a month in daycare. So if you were paying that, subtract 1,400 from that 2,500 that you started with, and you're already down to 1,100. And then you would have to use that to pay rent, groceries, gas. What if you had two kids? And daycare is not cheap. um you could easily spend $2,000 a month in daycare with two kids. That would pretty much be your whole budget. So on this, and if this is your monthly salary, can you realistically afford children? Which again, when you're 19, probably not a big deal, but if this is your salary at 25, 26, 29, and you're thinking about having a kid, can you afford to have a child on $2,500 a month? What does anybody think?
No.
Okay. And by the way, my son does not go to some super fancy daycare. There's our some daycares are like for one child, you're spending over $2,000 a month. So I mean, I just want to be clear about that. Like this is like an average daycare, and that's how much it costs for a child 0 to 2 years old. So again, just something that we didn't include in the budget. And here's a couple other things we didn't include. We started out having an emergency fund, having savings, but by the time we had to pay the other bills, it was gone. And a big one we didn't include, right? I'm sure you want to buy the Jordans when they come out or whatever else you into. You don't always want to just buy like clothes for work, but we didn't include that in your budget. In this budget, can you afford shoes? Can you afford to get your hair done on this budget? What about leisure activities? Now, obviously, this is like, outside of COVID, but like concerts, lounges, movies. Can you do any of that on this budget? Can you go on vacation on this budget?
Getting lots of no's. So
No, 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 no. Exactly. So again, just to go back, it may have sounded like it was a lot, but like by the time you start paying bills, it's really not a lot. And a lot of times people they get roommates. That's definitely a way to save some money. People get two jobs. But I want you to tell me, because here's a list of items that like you really couldn't afford. And on this budget, you couldn't afford a car. When you get a car, you have to get car insurance, and that just covers you in case you get in an accident. Your insurance company pays for everything and not you. You can't afford children. You can't afford to go to the movies, to go to concerts, to go to lounges. If you party, you like the club, like you can't do any of that. You don't have a savings. You can't shop for clothes outside of work, and you're not going on vacation. So does this sound like the kind of lifestyle you want to lead? Anybody?
getting some no's.
Okay. And this is a lifestyle that a lot of people lead, and they call it living paycheck to paycheck, where you literally like your bills take everything that you have. And so, like, if something unexpected happens, Like you literally have to live from your paycheck to your paycheck. There is nothing saved up in the bank. And it's hard. It's really hard. And think about how education changes your lifestyle, right? Again, we're looking at national averages. For somebody with additional college outside of high school, their monthly budget was a little bit higher. The bachelor's degree, and I subtracted 25% for taxes. So the bachelor's degree is a little bit higher. The advanced degree is even higher than that. So again, look at some of the things you can afford. You can afford vacation. You can afford a car. You can afford Jordans. And I wanted to give you some information about the average monthly income. And this information is from Bureau of Labor and Statistics, but it's specific to Baltimore. So you can look at some of these, you can look at different careers and see how much you make a month. Because I know a lot of you are in CTEs where you're training for some of these careers. Keep that in mind on those days when you're just like, oh, I don't feel like doing this. I don't feel like doing that. Like, this is the reason your families are pushing you. This is the reason your teachers are pushing you. This is the reason why, like they want you to continue your education, because these careers require education. They don't necessarily require college degrees. You can be a network administrator. Actually, this is the highest per month monthly salary. You can go to CCBC and take network administrator certifications and become a network administrator. You don't have to necessarily go to college. Many network administrators don't have a college degree, but you do have to continue education beyond high school. You can work in HVAC, and you don't, although if you work in HVAC and you get an apprenticeship, usually one day out of those five you actually take classes, and those classes you actually get college credit. But again, you don't necessarily, it's not enough credits to get a 2-year degree, but it is additional education. So again, when you look at these careers, you want to go to culinary school, you want to become a chef. Again, that requires some additional education, but look at the differences. Nurses, 59.47 a month. You can become a license. You can become you can become a registered nurse with a 2-year degree. So think about 3250 versus 5947. Think about 3250 versus 8166. So again, think about 3250. Maybe you feel like you want to teach versus 5634. So keep that in mind as you're starting to make decisions about what you want to do when you leave high school. I think when I was in high school, I know I didn't get it. Like, those decisions really impact your lifestyle. It's not just about like, oh yeah, I want to get this degree, or necessarily even going to college. Like, what if you don't continue your education, you are choosing a certain lifestyle. If you continue your education, you're choosing a certain lifestyle. So just keep that in mind, because you're now at the stage where you're being asked to make some choices. Okay. So I'll let Ms. Tucker summarize, but I just wanted to have you walk through so that the next time you don't necessarily feel like doing that college application, or the next time you're like, oh, I'm in this electrician apprenticeship, but I really don't feel like going to that interview to see if they'll accept me in an apprenticeship program once I graduate high school. Like, it's easy to not necessarily feel like doing certain things, but you're making a choice. And I just want you to understand that you are choosing a lifestyle. So keep that in mind, big picture. Again, when you have those days, you're like, I don't feel like finishing the application. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. You cannot do it, but think about what you're choosing. And I'm going to let Miss Tucker jump in and wrap things up. Okay.
That's a perfect wrap up, honestly. In the summary, I wanted to get to a couple of the questions before we distribute the survey. I saw a student's question talking about scholarships. What if we lived with family? That was from Kayla. That is a very good question, especially when we think about going off to college. If you choose to stay in the Baltimore area, it is ideal that you would stay in your family household to save on room and board costs. So that's also something to think about. I think that this was great, Inez. Thank you so much for teaching us more about budgeting. I think it just really helped us to get a clear picture on how far our money can really go in different levels of education. So with that, we're going to go ahead and distribute the survey before we close out, and I will drop it in the chat. Inez, do you want to go over the sessions for next week while I drop the survey?
Sure. And we hope you enjoyed this session. We've got some other ones coming up. Next week, we're going to be talking about Test Optional 101. How do test optional policies impact my chances at college admission? As you know, this year's seniors, last year's seniors were all impacted by COVID. And so you couldn't just say, okay, I'm going to go sign up for the SAT, I'm going to go sign up for the ACT, because you usually take those tests at high schools, and high schools were closed. So colleges understand that. And so a lot of colleges, almost every college, has become test optional at this point, because they know, especially with your class, last year's seniors, some of them got to take the SAT like their junior year, the ACT their junior year, before schools closed. But for you, class of 2021, when you were juniors, that's when school closed. So colleges understand that you may not necessarily have gotten a chance to take the ACT or the SAT, and that's what we're going to be talking about. And then November 25th, we're going to take a virtual college tour to Bowie State. Since we can't go in person, Ms. Tucker found this amazing website where you literally can pick a college, and there's a student that walks you through the college, just like they would if you were on the campus. They would, you would go through, and this is this building, this is our gym, this is our dorm, this is that. The same tour you would get in person, they do it virtually. So we're going to be talking about Bowie State. That's where I got my master's from. Shout out to Bowie. But that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing a virtual college tour. Okay. And we're going to ask you to please, please, please fill out the survey. Ms. Tucker put it in the chat room, and it just helps us. Like, we're asking you what's your opinion, what you like, what you didn't like. It's a survey.
They need access. I don't know if you're able to edit the permissions.
I'm sorry.
It says that students need access if you're able
to the survey.
Yeah.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much, everybody. Give me 1 second. Let me
While she's doing that, when you pull up the survey, there is a question all the way at the bottom, because I see some really good dialogue going on in the chat where we can have more conversations about financial freedom and access and things like that. We can definitely create more topics around this, since I see that this really interests you guys, especially when we talk about college access. On that last question, if you can add in some additional topics that you'd love to hear us talk about or experience, please take the time to do that as well. I'm really glad that this session was helpful and effective for students. I'm really glad that you guys were here. So give us 1 second. We'll edit the permissions, and then we will drop that survey your way.
Ms. Tucker, do you know how I'm pulling up the survey, but how I would edit the permission? What do I?
Let's see.
And I can
should be able to send it and then open it to all.
Okay, wait. So I just copied the link, and so you're saying put the link in the chat?
Well, I don't think you can put it in. We'll have the link, but they won't be able to access because the permissions aren't open.
So okay, so it says edit. I clicked on edit this form. Is that where it's add section, add video?
Let me see. Maybe I can try to do it from my end.
It wouldn't be add. If I add you as a collaborator, well, no, I don't. That's not gonna work. If I add you as
I can make the edit if you add me as a collaborator, but it should just be where you can just drop the link, and they can access it.
Oh, only people add it. Okay, change.
Thank you guys for being so patient.
Okay, it should work now.
Can you try to drop it in the chat?
Okay, let me see. Yep, sure can. Wasn't thinking about that. Hold on 1 second. Again, thank you everybody for your patience.
You guys are great. I feel like I have to redo my budget.
Can you let me know if you can access it now? Can everybody tell me? Can anybody let me know if you can access it?
Yes. But I think this is our view. This is the administrative view. Let me see.
Oh, he said he can't. Okay, give me 1 second. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Darius. Let me thought I.
Can you guys try the link I just put in the chat? Let's see if it works. Cool. Thank you, Darius. All right, go ahead and take minutes to complete your survey. And if you can give us well, don't do thumbs up in Zoom, but give us a 1 in the chat when you're finished. That'll be super helpful. I'll continue our playlist.
Thank you, everybody. The survey really helps us get better. So we really, really appreciate it. And it allows us to keep track of who attended. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do it.
All right. Recording while we